Welcome to our deep dive, into the Mahabharata. Um, we're going to be using Laura Gibbs's English retelling, you know, to explore this incredible Indian epic. And it's a story that's been told and retold for centuries. And today we're going to try to figure out, why that is.
It's a story within a story.
Oh, okay.
It starts with the author Vyasa needing to find a scribe to write down this epic. It's huge.
And he ends up making a deal with Ganesha, right?
Ganesha, the elephant-headed god.
I mean, what a way to kick things off.
Absolutely. But Ganesha, he doesn't just agree to be the scribe. There are conditions.
Yeah, there's always a catch, right?
He insists that Vyasa cannot pause in his recitation, and also that Ganesha has to understand each word before he writes it down.
So no breaks.
And the story goes that Ganesha breaks off one of his own tusks to keep writing when his pen breaks.
Wow, that's dedication.
Absolutely.
Just the fact that Ganesha, is involved in this story already makes it feel so important,
Yeah,
right?
it gives you a sense of the scope and scale.
Exactly.
But from this sort of like grand divine beginning, we move into the human drama. It all starts with King Shantanu. He falls in love with this like really captivating woman he meets by the river.
Sounds romantic.
It does. But it takes kind of a dark turn, right? She makes him promise never to question her actions, and then one by one, she drowns their first 7 children.
That's awful.
Can you imagine that?
I mean, it's heartbreaking, and I think it's also, it just raises so many questions, right? Like, why would she do this? But this is where the layers of the Mahabharata start to unfold, right?
Right.
She's not just an ordinary woman.
She's Ganga, the river goddess.
Ah,
And she's bound by a promise to the 8 Vesus.
okay.
They're powerful deities associated with the natural elements.
Right.
And they were cursed to be born as humans. So Ganga's duty was to give them this very, very brief human life.
So it's almost like a mercy killing.
In a sense, yes. She had to release them from this curse.
It's fascinating, right? How even these like seemingly horrific acts can be part of a larger cosmic plan.
Absolutely.
And, and it's the 8th son, Devrata, he's the one who survives.
Right, Pivavrata.
And, he eventually becomes this, super important character, Bhishma.
Right.
His story it's pivotal. It really sets the stage for all this conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Shantanu, he falls in love again.
He does.
This time with Satyavati.
Sakyavati.
But her father, he's got a condition for the marriage?
Of course he does. It wouldn't be the Mahabharata without a condition.
Right. Like there's always something, right? So he says her son must inherit the kingdom.
Right.
Which puts Shantanu in a really tough spot.
Oh, absolutely. What a dilemma. What a terrible situation.
Right. But his son, Devavrata, he's the one who comes up with the solution.
Yeah.
He says, I'm going to take a vow of celibacy.
Wow.
Meaning that no children of his could ever challenge Satyavati's sons for the throne.
Incredible.
I mean, that's a sacrifice, right?
It's an incredible sacrifice.
Giving up not just his claim to the throne, but also, like, his future.
His whole life, his entire future.
Exactly.
It's huge. And it's this vow that earns him the name Bhishma, which means dreadful.
Oh, wow.
Because the oath was so powerful, so final, it was almost scary. And in fact, the gods were so moved by this.
Yeah.
That they grant him a boon.
They grant him a boon? What was that?
The ability to choose the time of his own death.
Whoa.
So he gets to decide when he dies.
Oh my gosh. Talk about like fate and free will, right? Like it really makes you think about...
Right, exactly. How much control do we have over our own destinies?
Exactly. And Satyavati's origin story is also pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, she's a fascinating character.
So she's born from a fish apsara.
Right, a fish
It
apsara.
was like a water nymph, right?
Yeah, water.
Who swallows? Well, let's just say it's a tale you won't forget.
Let's just leave it at that.
We'll leave that one for another time. But back to the main line of succession. So Satyavati's sons, Chitrangada and Vitravirya, they become king.
They do, one after the other.
But they die pretty young, right?
Yeah, unfortunately they do,
Without any heirs.
without any heirs.
So now Satyavati's in this position where she needs to make sure that the dynasty continues.
Absolutely.
So she turns to her firstborn son,
To Vyasa,
Vyasa, the author of this epic
the author of this very epic.
that we're talking about. And he agrees to father heirs with the widowed queens,
Right.
leading to the births of 3 sons, Dhritarashtra, who was born blind, Pandu, who's unusually pale,
Right,
and Vidura, who's wise but born of a maid.
right.
So right from the start, you can sense, like, this potential for conflict.
Oh, absolutely.
Because who is the rightful heir? Who should be king?
Right, exactly.
And ultimately, Pandu becomes king.
He does.
But his reign is marked by a curse.
Right, he can't have children the usual way.
But fortunately, his wife Kunti, she's got a secret. A secret?
She has a mantra that allows her to summon gods
Wow.
and bear their children.
A mantra to summon gods. That's amazing.
It's kind of an interesting twist, right?
It's a huge twist.
It adds this whole other layer to the story.
Like divine intervention.
Right.
Right in the line of succession.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And this is how we meet the Pandavas.
The Pandavas.
The 5 sons of Pandu.
Right.
Each fathered by a different god. And then we have the Kauravas.
Right.
Dhritarashtra's sons.
100 of them?
100 of them.
Born from a ball of flesh.
Born from a ball of flesh.
So right away, we've got this like complicated family dynamic, right?
So it's a recipe for trouble.
Yeah.
Sibling rivalry on an epic scale.
Exactly. So we have these 2 sets of cousins.
The Pandavas and the Kauravas.
Both vying for power.
Absolutely.
Both vying for recognition.
Yep.
And it's only going to get more complicated from here.
Oh, yeah. This is just the beginning.
Just the beginning.
We're just getting started. So, like, we've got these 2 sets of cousins, the Pandavas and the Kauravas.
Yeah.
And they're, growing up in Hastinapura, training to be warriors.
It's interesting how, like, their training becomes this kind of like a microcosm of the larger conflict that's to come.
Right.
Like, one story that really stands out to me is the tale of Ekalavya.
Ekalavya.
This young boy, he lives in the forest, and he basically teaches himself archery.
Right, by watching Drona.
By watching Drona, exactly.
He considers Drona to be his guru.
Even though they've never formally met.
Right, even though they've never actually interacted.
And Ekalavya becomes so skilled. That he even surpasses Arjuna.
Right, Arjuna, the most talented of the Panda brothers.
Exactly.
And when Drona finds out about this, about Ekalavya's skill, he demands a guru dakshina.
Which is a guru fee.
A fee, yeah, like a traditional offering to the teacher. But he doesn't want gold. He doesn't want jewels. He wants Ekalavya's thumb.
His thumb.
His thumb. The thumb of his dominant hand.
I mean, that's brutal, right?
It's brutal.
It's like, talk about cutting off your, cutting off your future.
Your potential.
Exactly.
It really raises these questions, about power dynamics.
Yeah. And
about the lengths people will go to protect their position, to maintain their status.
As a listener, I mean, what do you think about this? Like, does Drona have the right to ask for this?
Oh, right. Is this a fair request?
Even though it's like crippling Ekalavya's talent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a difficult question to grapple with, right?
Right. There's this sense of injustice.
There is.
But there's also this tradition of the guru dakshina, right?
Oh.
The offering to the teacher.
So is he within his rights?
Exactly. It's definitely something to think about. But the story of Ekalavya isn't the only one that's woven into this tapestry of rivalry.
Right. Remember King Drupada?
Yes.
The one who was humiliated by Drona all those years ago?
Yeah, he wanted revenge.
He wanted revenge.
Yeah. So he prays to Shiva.
To Shiva.
For children who can defeat Drona and Bhishma.
The 2 most powerful warriors of the Kuru dynasty.
Right. And his prayers are answered.
They are.
He has 2 children.
A son, Krishtadumna.
Okay.
A fierce warrior.
Okay.
And Shikandin.
Shikandin.
A child who was born female, but raised as male.
Interesting.
And Shikandin's story is actually really, really fascinating because it connects back to Amba.
Amba.
Right, the princess who was rejected.
Oh, right, by both her betrothed and by Bhishma.
Exactly, and she vowed revenge against Bhishma.
And she's reborn as Shikandin.
Essentially, yeah. It's this idea that Shikandin is meant to play a role in Bhishma's eventual downfall.
Wow.
So it has this whole other layer to the narrative, right?
Right. It's like, fate and gender identity and the cyclical nature of revenge.
Exactly. It's all intertwined. But back at the palace, the tension between the Pandava and the Kaurava cousins, it just keeps escalating.
Yeah, it's like a pressure cooker.
It is. Even like seemingly mundane events become really charged with this rivalry.
Right. Their mothers, Kunti and Gandhari, they're constantly trying to outdo each other, right?
Right. They hold these opulent elephant rituals.
Yeah.
Each one trying to be more extravagant than the last.
Yeah, it's like a subtle but powerful display of their son's growing animosity, right?
Exactly. It's all about power and status and who has the upper hand.
And then Queen Satyavati, she sees what's happening.
She sees the conflict brewing.
And she's heartbroken.
Yeah, she is. She decides to retreat to the forest.
It's like she can sense the darkness that's coming.
Yeah, and she can't bear to watch it unfold.
It's almost symbolic, right?
It is.
Like the wisdom of the older generation giving way to the destructive ambition of the younger generation.
Oh, right.
And Duryodhana is a perfect example of this. He's so jealous of the Pandavas.
He's consumed by envy.
The Pandavas build this like incredible city,
Indraprastha.
It's this magnificent like testament to their, to their skill, their prosperity.
And it just fuels Duryodhana's jealousy.
Right. And then there's that famous story where he visits Indraprastha and he mistakes a floor for a pool.
Right. And he's so humiliated.
It's like a moment that reveals like how insecure he is and how desperate he is to prove himself.
Absolutely.
And this desperation, this insecurity, it leads him down a really dangerous path.
He teams up with his uncle, Shakuni.
Shakuni, who's kind of a master manipulator.
Oh, he's a sly one.
And they come up with this plan.
To challenge Yudhishthira to a game of dice.
To a game of dice, yeah.
Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, known for his righteousness, his sense of dharma.
He can't resist a challenge.
He can't. Especially one that seems like a test of his virtue.
But he doesn't realize that the game is rigged.
Totally rigged. The dice are loaded.
Wow.
Shakuni's a master of this.
It's such a classic tale of deception, right?
It is.
And the dangers of unchecked ambition.
Right. And Yudhishthira, driven by his honor, his sense of duty.
He just keeps making bad decision after bad decision.
He loses everything.
Everything.
His wealth, his kingdom, his brothers, even himself.
Wow.
And then in a move that shocks everybody, he stakes Draupadi.
Draupadi, his wife.
His wife.
And he loses her too.
He does. It's a devastating turn of events.
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine, right?
It is. And Duryodhana, drunk on this power, he tries to humiliate Draupadi.
In front of everyone.
He orders her to be disrobed in the assembly.
Oh my gosh. It's one of the most powerful scenes in the entire Mahabharata. It's so disturbing.
It is.
And Draupadi, she prays for help.
She prays desperately. And a miracle happens.
Miracle.
Her sorry, it just keeps going. It becomes endless.
Wow.
Protecting her modesty.
It's like divine intervention, right?
Absolutely.
Highlighting her purity.
Her strength.
Her strength in the face of, like, unimaginable adversity.
It's a really powerful moment.
But her husband, Bhima, he sees what's happening and he's enraged.
He is.
He makes a vow.
A vow to avenge Draupadi.
And this vow, like, hangs in the air, right?
It does. It foreshadows the violence that's to come.
Exactly. But Dhritarashtra, he sees how bad things have gotten and he tries to make amends.
He does. He offers to return the Pandavas' kingdom.
He does.
He does. He has a rare moment of clarity.
Right, like the Blind King sees clearly for a moment.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, it's too late.
It is. Duryodhana, he's so consumed by this desire for revenge.
He demands a rematch.
He does. He can't let it go.
So the stakes are even higher now.
13 years of exile for the losers.
13 years.
And of course, with Shakuni manipulating the dice, the Pandavas lose again.
You lose again.
They're forced to leave their kingdom.
And wander in the wilderness for 13 years.
It's a major turning point in the epic.
Yeah, it sets the stage for their eventual return and the war that's going to determine the fate of the entire Kuru dynasty. So the Pandavas they're banished, forced to leave everything behind and wander in the wilderness for 13 years. It's a long time. What do they even do during this exile?
It's interesting because, exile isn't just about punishment in this story. It becomes this period of, like, learning,
Yeah.
and reflection. They meet all these rishis.
Rishis.
Yeah, wise sages who live in the forest. And these rishis, they share stories.
Oh.
Ancient stories, teachings. It's almost like they're preparing the Pandavas for the trials that lie ahead.
Like a crash course in wisdom and survival.
Yeah.
Are there any stories in particular that stand out?
Well, they hear the story of Rama. Rama?
Yeah.
The ideal king, known for his righteousness.
Right.
His adherence to duty. So it's like a reminder of what a true leader should be. They also hear the story of Nala.
Who's this king?
Who loses his kingdom in a gambling match.
Oh.
Kind of mirroring their own fate.
Yeah. That's a powerful parallel.
It is.
It's like highlights the dangers of gambling and the importance of making wise choices. But, exile is not all philosophical discussions and moral lessons.
No, it's not. There are moments of danger. There's conflict.
Like with Jayadratha.
Jayadratha, the king who tried to abduct Draupadi.
Yeah.
He runs into the Pandavas during their exile, and he suffers a pretty humiliating defeat at the hands of Bhima.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder that even in the wilderness, the past can come back to haunt you.
The past is never really past, is it?
Not in the Mahabharata.
And speaking of the past, Bhima has this remarkable encounter with Hanuman, the monkey god.
Right.
It's a symbolic meeting, right?
It is.
Like, it's almost reinforcing Bhima's incredible strength.
His connection to the divine.
Exactly.
Now, while Bhima is out there, testing his strength, Arjuna, the skilled archer, he spends his time in exile training, intense training. He actually travels to Indra's heaven.
Indra's heaven.
And obtains celestial weapons from the gods.
So he's like leveling up his skills.
Leveling up, exactly.
Okay, so they're becoming stronger, they're wiser, they're better equipped, but their exile isn't over yet.
No, they have to spend their final year of exile in disguise. Hiding.
Right.
Hiding. Where? In the court of King Virata.
Oh, wow. So they're like living among their enemies?
Undetected.
Undetected.
Each brother has to assume a different identity. It's a real test of their humility.
And their resourcefulness.
Their resourcefulness. Can they blend in?
What could possibly go wrong, right?
Well, trouble seems to find them even in disguise. Kichaka, the king's brother-in-law.
Yeah.
He harasses Draupadi.
He does.
He does.
And what happens?
Bhima, disguised as a cook, he's not going to stand for this.
So he protects Draupadi.
He does. He ends up killing Kichaka.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty risky, right?
It's risky, but it's Bhima. He's not known for his subtlety.
He's definitely a man of action.
He is. But of course, eventually, their cover is blown. Duryodhana, always suspicious,
Right.
He figures out that they're hiding in Virata's kingdom.
Yeah.
And he launches an attack.
Yeah.
Hoping to expose them, force them back into exile.
Okay.
But his plan backfires. The 13 years of exile, they come to an end. And Arjuna, he reveals his true identity.
Wow.
Leads Virata's forces to victory.
Against the Kauravas.
Against the Kauravas. It's a triumphant return for the Pandavas.
It is.
The time for hiding is over.
So the stage is set for war. But
Yeah.
before we get into that, is there any attempt at a peaceful resolution?
There is. Yudhishthira, he's a peacemaker at heart.
Right.
He tries to avoid bloodshed. He sends a message to Duryodhana, asks for the return of their kingdom.
He does.
He does. And Krishna himself
No.
goes to Hastinapura as an envoy,
Wow.
hoping to negotiate a settlement, hoping to prevent war.
It doesn't work, does it?
No. Duryodhana refuses to compromise.
Yeah.
He's convinced that what he wants is rightfully his. And so Krishna's peace mission fails,
So both sides start preparing for war.
knowing that the fate of the Kuru dynasty is at stake.
It's all come down to this.
It has.
And both Arjuna and Duryodhana, they approach Krishna for help.
They do.
And this is where we see a really crucial decision being made.
Right.
Arjuna chooses Krishna as his charioteer,
Right.
valuing Krishna's wisdom, his guidance,
His counsel.
while Duryodhana, he chooses Krishna's vast army.
Right. So one is choosing strategy, one is choosing might.
Interesting.
It is.
And the battleground for this epic showdown, it's Kurukshetra,
Kurukshetra.
a place that's already soaked in the history of conflict.
Right. A land where the blood of countless warriors has been spilled. It's
Yeah.
like the weight of history is already there.
It's a fitting setting for this final confrontation. So the war begins.
18 days.
18 days of battle.
18 days.
18 days of heroic feats and tragic losses and moments that defy belief.
Absolute.
Can you walk us through some of the key events that really stand out?
So at first, the Kaurava forces, they're led by Bhishma, the grand old warrior. He's practically invincible.
Yeah.
But he eventually falls on a bed of arrows. He can't fight Shikandin,
Right. Shikandin, who was Amba, reborn. It's like fate, it's like her revenge has finally come full circle.
It has. And then, there's the death of Abhimanyu.
Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son.
Arjuna's son, trapped, killed in this really brutal, unfair battle. And his death, it just fuels Arjuna's rage.
And Krishna, knowing that Arjuna has vowed to kill Jayadratha.
Jayadratha, the one responsible for Abhimanyu's death.
He performs a miracle. He hides the sun.
Hides the sun to enable Arjuna to fulfill his vow.
It's amazing.
Before sunset.
It's amazing how, Krishna is there every step of the way, guiding events, shaping the course of this war.
He is. But the war rages on. The losses mount on both sides.
Yeah.
And finally, Bhima confronts Duryodhana.
In that like epic mace fight.
In this brutal mace fight.
Brutal.
And Bhima, he breaks Duryodhana's tie,
Fulfilling his vow.
fulfilling that vow, yes, and avenging Draupadi.
And securing victory for the Pandavas.
The Pandavas are victorious.
But it's a bittersweet victory, right?
Nice.
The battlefield is covered with the bodies of friends and family.
And the violence, it doesn't even end there.
No.
Ashwapama, driven by grief and rage over his father's death. Drona, he launches this horrific night attack on the Pandava camp,
Oh my gosh.
killing Draupadi's brothers
Yeah.
and the 5 sons of the Pandavas.
This is awful. It's like this cycle of violence that just can't be broken.
It's revenge upon revenge, and then, amidst all this devastation, we have this other revelation, Karna.
Karna, the valiant warrior.
This
Yes.
valiant warrior who fought on the Kaurava side.
Right.
Turns out he's Kunti's firstborn son,
What?
abandoned at birth.
So Arjuna, he's been fighting his brother.
His brother, all this time.
Oh my gosh. And Kunti, she only reveals this now.
It's a devastating truth to come to light.
It is.
And then there's Gandhari.
Gandhari, who's been blindfolded this entire time, right?
Removes her blindfold,
Fair.
and she gazes upon the battlefield.
And sees like utter devastation.
She steps on the skulls of her own sons as she's searching for a mango.
Oh, it's just heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking, yeah. And her sorrow, it turns to anger
Anger at who?
at Krishna. She
Yeah.
curses him. She predicts that his clan, the Yadavas, that they will destroy each other
Oh no.
and that he will die alone in pain. It's a powerful curse.
It is. So the war is over.
The Pandavas are victorious.
But it's a victory marked by just immeasurable loss.
It is.
What happens next?
Eventually, the Pandavas, they renounce their kingdom.
They do.
They're weary of bloodshed. They're burdened by grief. And they embark on this final journey
A final journey to where?
to Mount Meru.
Mount Meru.
They try to reach heaven.
Okay.
But the ascent is treacherous. And one by one, each of the Pandavas, they fall,
They fall.
except for Yudhishthira,
Yudhishthira, the most righteous of them all.
the most righteous.
Why? Why does he survive when the others don't?
It's almost like a final test,
A test.
a purging of their earthly flaws
Before they can reach heaven.
before they can attain true liberation.
And even Yudhishthira, even he is tested.
He is at the gates of heaven. He's accompanied by this stray dog
No.
that has been following him faithfully throughout his journey. And he refuses to enter heaven without the dog.
Wow. I mean, that's talk about compassion.
Compassion, loyalty.
He's willing to sacrifice eternal bliss for this creature he's come to love.
It's the ultimate test. And Yama
Yeah.
got it. And Yudhishthira's father, by the way.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
He appears and reveals that the dog was actually Dharma,
Dharma, like cosmic order.
cosmic order.
Wow.
So Yudhishthira's unwavering commitment to righteousness,
Even when it meant personal sacrifice.
it earns him entry into heaven.
He passes the test.
He does. But his journey isn't over yet. He's shocked to find the Kauravas in heaven.
The Kauravas are in heaven?
They are. And he chooses to descend into Naraka, into hell, to be with his family.
Wow.
He can't bear to be separated from them, even in the afterlife.
It's an incredible act of love and loyalty. I mean, he's willing to give up paradise to be with his family.
He is. And his time in Naraka, it becomes this period of purification, a confrontation with his flaws, with the consequences of his actions, the things that led to the war.
So even in hell, there's this opportunity for growth.
There is.
And eventually, through these experiences and his unwavering commitment to truth and justice, Yudhishthira, he achieves true enlightenment,
And reaches Vaikuntha, the highest heaven.
where he's reunited with his family, with Krishna.
The Mahabharata, even in a simplified form,
Right.
it's this incredibly complex and multifaceted epic. It's a story about duty, about karma, about consequences of choices.
About the destructive power of desire, of anger, but also, the enduring strength of love, of compassion.
Absolutely. It's a story that has resonated with people for centuries.
And it continues to resonate with us today.
It does. It makes us think about our own lives.
It does. Our motivations, our relationships, the choices we make. What do you think? What does this epic, this tale that's been passed down for generations, what does it offer us today as individuals trying to navigate the complexities of the modern world?
I think it invites us to reflect, on our own battles, our own struggles with right and wrong, our desires, our attachments. And it reminds us that every action has a consequence.
Right.
But even in the darkest of times, there's this hope for redemption, for growth, for the triumph of good over evil.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Mahabharata.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new today and that you'll continue to explore this incredible epic. For additional resources, you can visit Laura Gibbs's website, mahabharata.lauragibbs.net. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.